Welcome to the Sleeping Barber Podcast.
V here, co-host of the Sleeping Barber Podcast. Thank you for tuning in to the post-pod discussion of our latest episode titled Navigating the Complexities of B2B Buying, featuring Jann, Schwartz, and Mimi Turner. Now, Marc and I discuss the emotional jobs to be done in B2B buying, the risk of political capital in buying decisions, and big brands versus niche brands, different problems, often the same solution, and so much more. And while I have you, please feel free to like, comment, share, or even get in touch with us. We're always looking to find ways to make this show better. Now on with the post-pod.
It's time for the post-pod.
Post-pod.
Featuring Marc and V.
Talking about Jann and Mimi.
About the complexities of B2B buying.
Yeah.
What a great intro.
And it is a complex process. The buying side.
Oh my gosh.
Never mind the advertising side. Like the buying side is crazy.
What a fascinating conversation. We haven't had the opportunity to really talk about B2B that way before. So I found it extremely refreshing.
Yeah.
But yeah, where do you want to kick off?
Well, how about this? Like a personal story for me. So as part of the marketing association, the Calgary Marketing Association, I recently bought software.
Okay.
So it's a B2B product and it's kind of an ERP, but for associations. But I'm also the only employee, but I have a board that I work with. And I have also partners that I work with, contractors that do different things. What we had before was killing me. And so I bought this software. It was Glue Up. Actually, turns out it's amazing software.
Okay.
But I didn't know for sure until I bought it. Okay. And so it was really nerve-wracking because all the decision-making process was on my shoulders. If I made a wrong choice, I had to live with it. Because we signed a term contract of like 3 years. But the problem was like, I just didn't know if, like, I went through all the reviews and all that kind of stuff and did all kinds of research. And so it chose that product. But just the nervousness and the fear of making the wrong choice was excruciating. It was making me crazy for months while I was doing this process because I knew I needed to make a choice and make a decision. But that anxiety and that fear only amplifies and gets exponentially bigger the more people I can imagine that you have in a decision-making process.
In that example alone, I think it ties really well into one of the things both Jann and Mimi were talking about was simply like B2B buying is relational, not just rational. Right? And if you're a cohort of one, and then you're putting a lot of this pressure, yes, you had contractors to kind of help you along with that. But at the end of the day, you're making that decision. When you don't have that peer influence or some of those other parts, it does become more nerve-wracking because, like you said, you're owning that decision top down. And if it goes south, you got to live with it because you signed it up for 3 years.
Totally.
Or on the flip side, if it goes well, it's like you're celebrating by yourself. But I mean, I guess that's okay too.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And now I'm promoting it going, this is such a great decision. What a great idea.
I'm so smart.
But on the advertising side and the promotional side, or even the customer experience side, the onboarding experience didn't match the actual product itself. Like the product is way better than the onboarding experience would have indicated that it is.
Okay.
And so it's really interesting thinking about it from a buying perspective, because buying isn't just a moment in time. Like, yeah, I'm signing a contract at one point, but there's so many things that happen after a moment in time when I sign the contract about the onboarding and then the implementation and all that kind of stuff. And the product itself actually wasn't something I really was confident in until 6 months after I made the purchase.
Right. Yeah.
And so there's that emotional component you were just talking about, the relational component where, man, that was like, it's just a recent thing for me. So I'm just kind of drawing on this as a conversation point around this topic.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so emotional.
Yeah, of course. Do you remember the conversation we had with Brett Adamson?
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking about like what the buying groups really look like, the amount of people that are coming in. And Mimi and Jann spoke to him about like buying groups being more like networks.
Yeah.
Right. One thing that continues to fascinate me is the amount of people that touch a lot of these decisions.
Totally.
And you could see why it can take 3, 4, 5, 6 a year to decide on a technology for your business. And I love the example that you brought, because I think everyone feels that level of anxiety Because the moment their name is attached to, like, you're part of the buying group and you're committing to something, people are just going to go with what they know, what they've seen, what they've heard, what's more dominant. It's also why they bring in consultants, because they want to, cover your ass CYA a little bit and say, it was Deloitte or it was PwC or so-and-so that suggested this, they get paid for this. And it's fascinating because that slows down the speed to which organizations can react or, catch up or whatever the case may be. And I just think it's fascinating that we haven't figured out that, hey, a buying group needs to be a small cohort of people that have subject matter expertise. They're maybe supported with a few others, et cetera. And then you just go. You put trust in that group. Instead, everyone wants to be a stakeholder, while at the same time, they don't want the responsibility either. So I think that's really fascinating.
Mimi talked about that a little bit too. The number one job for marketers is to not sacrifice political capital.
Yes,
which
exactly.
I think is so true, because you can't, like in my case, again, in that example, there's a small buying group. I had some input from other people, but I couldn't afford it. I had more ability to afford risk because there's fewer people involved. But the bigger the buying group gets and the bigger the organization gets, the bigger the buying group gets. It's almost given. You're putting your neck out every time you make a recommendation or a suggestion. And if it's not agreeable to the rest of the group, whether it's the best product or not, actually has nothing to do with it.
Has nothing to do with it.
It's just whether they think it's a good thing or not.
Yeah. And again, I think it was maybe Jann that spoke to this, but buyers don't get rewarded if things go great, but they'll carry all the blame if it fails.
Yeah.
Like that's
totally.
That's it.
Totally.
If you make the right decision, like, we expected you to make the right decision. That's why you get paid, right? Make the wrong decision, you're wearing that.
Yeah. I had that too when I was working with you at Sport Check.
Poor guy.
Because we wanted a social media service, like software,
right,
to support a whole bunch of things, including our triaging system for social care with customers. And so we made a choice to go with this product that sounded really great. But then people just didn't adopt it in other departments. Like we needed to coordinate with other, like the customer service department and all that kind of stuff. The product department. And so on paper, it looked really great, but in principle, it just fell apart. And then I ended up in that position where we're like, well, why did you pick that product? Nobody's using it.
It's not my fault. It's not my fault no one's using it. But that's where it goes back to the original conversation when, groups become networks, is as a part of that process, they're very easily to raise their hand and be like, well, we just needed to be a part of the process and vet that with you. And then all of a sudden from a committee of 4, it turns into a committee of 20.
Totally.
Then that becomes a lot more difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. And to Jann's point, I think he was the one that brought up, like, we really need to redefine what a product actually is.
Yeah.
Because it's rarely just the feature benefit of the product. It's not necessarily the budget or the button or the widget or the thingamabob, the doohickey that does this thing.
Totally.
Yeah. There's so much more about what it is that all those things do. I think you talked about it as, it's the hole that goes in the wall. It's not the drill or the bit.
No, absolutely. Well, it goes down to the jobs to be done. But before we go there, and I really wanted to talk about the big breakthrough, because I think you and I were both in that moment. We're like, what is happening right now?
Yeah.
And you could just see me. Well, it was Mimi that kicked it off. And then I'm sure listeners, if you've already listened to the episode, you would have picked up on it. So she literally puts a pause on everything. She's like, guys, wait, we got something here, right? And it was the conversation around emotional jobs to be done.
Yeah.
That they've never really made that correlation that way, which I thought was really fun to watch unfold before our eyes.
Yeah. What did you think about, like, because I know you've spent more time in B2C, I would say, right? Than
Almost
B2B.
Exclusively. Yeah, exclusively.
So does that resonate as much in a B2C world, do you think, or is it exclusive to B2B?
I don't know if it's so much exclusive. I think there's an emotional component on the consumer side as well.
Yeah.
I think the way it's being positioned right now, I think I could see why it probably fits better on the B2B side. But I still think there's elements of it when you think of truly try to start breaking things down. They are somewhat emotional jobs to be done. Even thinking about, like, when you're trying to present a new idea or a new campaign internally, like there's a huge emotional component to
Mhm.
that, and the job to be done to get people to buy in on it. So
Yeah.
what is that story arc that you're going to build that allows people to kind of follow what it is that you're saying? The way you're presenting data, the way we
Mhm.
talked about the data presentation with Grace Kite, if you
Yeah.
remember, right? Sometimes it's little things. Instead of saying like 700% up, let's like, 7 point whatever times up, right? It's just little things like that. And I think, I think I can see the B2B continuity and how that works on that side. But I think there's loosely you could probably adapt this and refine it a little bit for a B2C.
Yeah, I was thinking recently about a family vacation as well.
Okay.
It resonates in different buying, so not in all B2C. Like if I'm buying a chocolate bar, nobody cares what my emotional jobs. Well, no, that's not even true. Maybe like the hunger,
there's
sort of the Snickers it satisfies, as an example. Like that's an emotional job to be done, I guess.
Yeah. And then there's the internal emotional that happens. Like if I eat this, it's going right to my hips.
Watch that figure of yours, V.
That's right.
But no, that's true. It is true. The vacation was one that came up recently, and so we're kind of like, okay, well, like there's it in a very real sense. My family is kind of in that buying situation. They are a buying committee, and there's some people in the buying committee that I have
family.
more political capital than others.
That's fair.
Yeah. Because I don't want to go to somewhere where my kids are going to be miserable.
No, that ruins a vacation.
Yeah.
It ruins a vacation.
So it does kind of fit also with that B2C environment too. And not in all cases maybe, but it does. Hey, what did you think about the implication of that with creative?
I mean, I think that's where even on the B2C side, you can kind of really see that being translated very well. But I think there is a huge component here on the creative side that does get influenced by all of this. Because again, when you think about the amount of people that you need to, this is all too real for me right now, to be honest with you. So I'm getting a little PTSD. But it is one of those things where it was yesterday, Matt Gregson, he put on a post like, that said, there's somewhere in the world, a non-marketer is telling a marketer how marketing works.
Mm-hmm.
And that for me was just so like, yes, absolutely. It happens all the time, etc.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about creative, think about the buying you have to have on the creative side.
Yeah.
The emotional investment that you have to make on that side.
Yeah.
And then making everyone understand what is the angle and trying to remove themselves as focus groups, because it's very easy to do that. So absolutely, I think there's a huge component of influence there on the creative side. Sometimes it works well, sometimes it just doesn't. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
What did you think?
Well, I think a lot about the emotional jobs to be done. Like typically, and we talked a little bit about this with Jann and Mimi too, that you would have I think the example I used was aerospace. So past role, I was working with an ERP organization, and so they had defined, I think it was 5 or 6 specific segments that they were going after in the market. So industry segments. So like aerospace was one, and that was one of the examples we talked about with Jann and Mimi. So another one was warehouses. So think about like an ERP and you're presenting it to your services. You're trying to target people who might buy the product and the service. Mm-hmm. Historically, what that meant, not just for that company, but for a lot of companies, is you go, okay, well, we show our logo and then we show our product in use. So we have to find an aerospace looking like a hangar or something like that. And then we also have to find a warehouse. And so 2 different groups of people, we have to show them each group to be specific and to be personalized and mass customization and all that kind of stuff. We have to get the right piece of creative to the right person at the right time in the buying journey and the buying decision. So there's a whole bunch of complexities with that. But then if you think about the emotional jobs to be done, and your budget gets split between 2 because you're running 2 different pieces of creative, right?
Yeah, totally.
If you think about the emotional jobs to be done, there's probably a whole bunch of things around there. Like, I'm just making this up, but let's say one of it was, I don't want to make a mistake in choosing the right software. Right. That actually is a unifying segmentation tool. So you can, you know what I mean? So you no longer need to necessarily show the 2 separate pieces of creative and split your budget into to reach all of those people. You could just have one larger audience with the same emotional job to be done. And then that could become a very differentiated strategy, so to speak.
A good point.
So that you don't actually have to, you can target the emotional side rather than the physical environment that people are working in.
Yeah. No, I really like that. I like the notion of kind of unifying against one emotional job to be done and that becoming like a segmentation, if you will.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
So I think it has like massive implications for creative and then for budgeting and for all kinds of things there.
Is there anything else that stood out to you?
I would say, yeah, the product. We talked about the product, the political capital, risking that, emotional jobs to be done. And it's that it's more relational than rational. There's some conversation around the big brands versus niche brands. And so whether you're big or small, you have to start with an assumption that no one's heard of you.
Yes.
And so you need to be famous with the right people in the right category. And I think there's a thing around that with just trying to be like, how do you reach the most people in your category? And knowing that the buying group is probably 10, 15 people or more. And that those buyers, the hidden separate conversation we have with Mimi, but hidden buyers are ones that aren't the economic buyers, but they pop in and out of the buying process over the length of the time. So just in terms of reaching all those people, there's a really important role for marketing to create, I don't want to say unity, but familiarity, and to become famous with all people on the buying committee, which is probably much bigger than we historically have thought about it.
Yeah.
And so becoming, whether you're a big or small company, selling and marketing your products and services, I think that's a really important component.
Absolutely. I would argue that, big brands versus niche brands, different problems, same solution, right? And the solution still is, how do you make sure that you're highlighting a category specific awareness, like you said, around the buying groups? And I think about like a big brand would be Salesforce, right? Salesforce, they invest a lot of money. A lot of people know of them. And if you're in a buying group and you're between, say, a Salesforce product or, I don't know, a lesser known product, it's very easy to be like, no, let's just go with Salesforce. Everyone's heard of it.
Totally.
Right? The niche brands, you want to start being able to build the same level of awareness. Of course, you may not reach it the same way. So that's why you have to start like, who are those people in the buying groups that are, what are the titles that they hold? So you start targeting those titles. You can use LinkedIn, for example, to do that, or when you're doing outreach and things to that effect. So you contextually try to tie your product to a potential buying group. But it comes down to the awareness that you're able to create, because if you don't, it's just going to become that more difficult. You either need a lot of people internally that believe in the product, have used the product to become that source of what's it called? Not the motivation, maybe the source of truth for that product. I don't know. There's a better word. I just can't think of it right now.
Yeah.
Instead of just relying on the affinity that exists around that other product, like a Salesforce, for example. It's very easy to go to Salesforce because I went to Salesforce. Why wouldn't I? It's the biggest, it's the best.
Yeah.
You see it everywhere. Everyone using it.
Yeah. As you're saying that, I was imagining like a product like Salesforce, which serves a lot, has so many different features and benefits and products. And then tentacles is the way my brain was visualizing it.
That's
reaching into an organization. And I'm using my hand as a tentacles spreading out into the organization. But with every one of those tentacles, like you've got a bunch of buyers around my pinky, you've got a bunch of buyers around my ring finger. You know what I mean? Like
exactly.
And they're not like in my example of the software that I bought for social care, like that it has extensions into customer service, that it has extensions into product groups. If they haven't heard of that, then it becomes so much harder for people to know, like, trust, agree to the product and service. So yeah, it's funny. There's like in B2C, I think one of the big differences is you've got a lot of people making a lot of decisions, whereas in B2B, you've got a lot of people trying to make one decision. And it's sort of that confidence that that's the right decision and an agreement that is so hard.
Let's not forget, there's also the other thing that a lot of these larger companies will do. Historically, it was like Adobe that would do this primarily. Anything that was Adobe oriented, they'd buy a new product that didn't know, then they'd just wrap it into the ecosystem and they would rebrand it from an Adobe perspective, help drive that affinity. That's another way of potentially doing some of these smaller products that maybe don't have that same affinity or the awareness. It's very easy to go through that process. But of course, as a buying group, it's like, well, how do all these things integrate together when they haven't been built to be together, right?
Yeah.
And that's a whole other conversation. Anyways, Jann and Mimi, if you're still listening, thank you so much for coming back on. We really thoroughly enjoyed that conversation. And I hope you did too. Well, they did call us their favorite podcaster, so I'm going to take that as a win.
Yeah, it's amazing how many times we get that.
Yeah, right. And Marc, my friend, great being back in studio virtual studio with you.
Back from Greece.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. Okay, well, and thank you for keeping us in your ears.
Yeah, it's also great.
Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.